there's this fear of like AI taking their job, but in fact, I think AI is going to empower them because it's going to allow for better patient care, taking care of these patients and guiding them to better health versus leaving a patient on their own and they just get worse and debilitated. And by the time they make it to the clinician, the problem is much, much worse.
Oh my God. That's why I went to diabetes and this amazing cloud care model where actually physicians are like a control tower and they can see which patients are doing well, but also which patients need immediate attention.
You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
Source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the puppets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, billion-dollar company. They had help up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech. Their host, Omar M. Khateeb.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today's a really interesting episode in the sense that it's an extension of a lot of the neurotech and BCI content that we're creating. I'm joined today by Carolina Aguilar, who's the CEO and co-founder of Inbrain Neuroelectrics. And more importantly, this company kind of came on my radar because of the very innovative use of a specific material. When I was a college student at UTEP, I learned about this very interesting material called graphene from one of my very good friends, Eva Diemer, who went on to get her PhD and really focus on it. And it's a very interesting material in terms of the applications in engineering and in a lot of places. And so Inbrain really focuses on leveraging this specifically to help achieve certain things in the human brain that haven't been done before. And so we're going to talk all about that and more. Carolina, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Omar. It's such a pleasure to be here. You are a superstar of MedTech, so thank you for thinking about me.
Not at all. It's easy when I get to sit down with amazing people like you. So, and maybe before we talk about Inbrain, I want to talk about you first of all. Like, where did you grow up? Where were you raised, and how did you go about getting your education before you got to Inbrain? Give us a little background on that.
Thank you. So I'm Spanish, as you can certainly hear by my accent, kind of Penelope Cruz. Raised and born initially in Madrid, in Spain. Study pharmacy there. Then I realized that pharmaceuticals were a little bit old style. You know, it was about taking a pill, you don't know anything about it, and hopefully you feel better, and you don't also know if this is causing side effects or not. So I thought there has to be more that I could think of that I could, do after a pharmaceutical degree. So I got a scholarship. I went to the US. Actually, I went to Virginia Tech and studied neuroscience and neurotoxicology, kind of the effect of pesticides on things like Parkinson, Alzheimer's, and how to overcome that. And after getting my master's thesis there, I came back to Spain, but there were not neuroscience or neurotech jobs. So I actually took a job in cosmetics, in consumer goods. And I actually brought a Greek company into the Spanish market that eventually was sold to a very important Catalonian and Spanish luxury goods family that it's dealing with very important brands like Nina Ricci and Carolina Herrera. Anyway, very far from where I was fit for in many senses. But it was a great experience. And is when someone called me from Medtronic and everything started. I did in the middle business degrees, MBAs, and half of a PhD, but always between, let's say, Spain and then US.
Fantastic. And that's a really interesting background, especially, so you mentioned you did some work in the effects of pesticides on things like Alzheimer's and everything. And I'm guessing the obvious thing is like, fortunately you're back in Europe where they don't use a whole lot of pesticides, but I guess the idea is like try and buy organic and locally sourced, correct?
Well, look, it was a master thesis, so I didn't think it was going to be that important. But looking back, I thought it was a very strategic path, because if you look at what is going on, just in the last 4 years, since 2011, the prevalence of Parkinson's disease in Spain has quadrupled, but also around the world. And there is a famous neurologist, Bas Bloem, in Europe here, based in Holland, that also strongly believes that pesticides have a profound effect on the development of diseases like Parkinson's. So I think that when I was 24, I sensed there was something there. I always
was good at looking at the future and picking up things that I thought they were going to be major. And I think it's starting to be major. If you look at also the animal models that are in Parkinson's, this is a pesticide, it's a pyrethroid. So it makes all sense. And I think we should all be a little bit conscious about what food we take and, how do we evolve with a good nutrition and a good well-being.
100%. I think, especially here in America, a lot of people are kind of waking up to that and trying their best to get better quality food. Even me in my home here, we started growing fruit trees and different things in our backyard, which is great. So then, how did Inbrain come about? What were you doing, and how did you decide to make this jump into neurotech?
Oh, wow. Well, so after being in cosmetics, my whole purpose in life was actually to understand the brain and treat the brain. And I thought at that point, deep brain stimulation was the most advanced BCI at the moment, right? Or at least a neural interface that exists at the moment. So I was obsessed with Medtronic. I finally joined them, and I spent 10 years actually as a business leader of deep brain stimulation for Europe, Middle East, Africa, but then globally. And then 3 more years in something different, more on the diabetes side, but also in a very digital and interesting business there. It's just that the 10 years that I was there, it was a great school, but every year and every platform, it was a bit incremental and not fully transformative. And there were many times where we were talking to patients, and I was going to patient advocacy groups talking about DBS as a therapy, and they would say, yeah, I mean, I don't have any alternative, but it's true that it works in Mary, but it doesn't work in Peter. And I start thinking, why is that? And how can we make that better? And what is the way to actually make the effectiveness of things like DBS instead of 60%, 80%? And then everybody will get it because there's not an alternative. And how technology could get there. And what other applications could help us to actually decode the brain in high resolution, but also treat them at a single cell size in high resolution, and how to get more control on the network. So I start thinking how to solve all these problems. And eventually I abandoned. I said, let's go to diabetes. I don't think the market is ready to actually give an answer to this. So I was in diabetes, very happy, and an investor in Barcelona called me, Joe Sanfeliu from Asabis, and said, hey, there's some guys here about this material called graphene, and it's on your field of expertise. And I had given my input on some of his due diligence here and there. So he asked me to come to the pitch. And I was still in Medtronic, trying to sort some ideas that we had about the clinics. And I went there and I thought, wow, I mean, if we can miniaturize at a cell-like size, and if we can read but also write at that level of resolution, and if this is flexible and we can shape it as to conform perfectly with the brain, and if I could bring people that I met before, for instance, from the Sapiens, from Philips, I mean, what would it give us? So I didn't have an answer for that, but I went to see customers that I work with on my DBS experience, and one was Ludwig Srinso in UCL, but others as well. They look at this prototype that we had at the moment and said, this changes everything. You have to make it happen. So that's how we took it. I was not very convinced, but I saw that indeed this was a transformational step and not an incremental step.
Interesting. That's fascinating. And I think what I love is, as a founder, your background in that you're in very different areas and you've picked up sort of different skill sets from those areas. And when you combine them together, allows you to kind of approach a problem in a very different way. And so that being said, tell us a little bit more about like why the approach using graphene, and for the people who took a little bit of chemistry in college. The one thing that's unique about graphene is that it's very strong. It's stronger than a diamond, mainly because I believe is a covalent bonds that are between the carbon atoms that makes it so strong. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
good.
I'm not a material expert. As a disclaimer, my co-founders are, but I learned about graphene also in the latest years. So I can transfer what I learned, but not more than that. Maybe you even know more. Although
I don't know.
definitely I've
I
been
might have just
studying a
gotten
lot.
lucky remembering that one random fact. Thanks. Shout out to Eva Deemer, or Dr. Eva Deemer now. So, you guys got, I believe, your breakthrough designation through the FDA in 2023, right? So, what about graphene made you decide to take a bet on that? Because technically, now that we'll get to the news about your first human, you're the first company to really use it in this way. What's unique about it? Why graphene?
What's going on, everybody? Quick commercial break. And if you're wondering, no, this is not AI. This is a real baby, and I'm on daddy daycare. But the show must go on, and commercials got to get shot. And I need to tell you about this really fantastic event that's coming up November 19th and 20th in the heart of Silicon Valley called MedDevice Silicon Valley, brought to you by the fantastic folks over at MD&M. As many of you know, you met up with me at MD&M East when I was doing a keynote in New York City. I had an amazing time there. And so I teamed up with MD&M to talk more about their upcoming event in Silicon Valley. It's a great event that's going to be coming up. And it should tell you how big this event really goes. They go big at MD&M. This one's going to be hosted at the Santa Clara Convention Center in the heart of Silicon Valley. They're going to have a lot of fantastic things, but let me tell you a couple of reasons why you should go. First of all, MedDevice Silicon Valley is the launching pad for tomorrow's groundbreaking medical devices. They're going to be able to help you push past those hurdles in product development, get the latest regulatory updates to stay compliant, and build the OEM industry partnerships that get your devices designed, built, and out to market faster. They have a lot of great categories in the products section. I'll give you some examples: 3D printing, digital health, adhesives, contract manufacturing, medical device components. So if you're building a product, this is the event you have to go to, and especially in the heart of Silicon Valley, it's going to be a fantastic event full of amazing sessions and people, a lot of product leaders. They're going to have certain sections that I think you're going to love. For example, a couple things that stood out to me. One is their sourcing solutions. One thing that's very difficult is figuring out which suppliers you should go to. All these suppliers are going to be there for you to meet to decide which ones are the right one to go with. They have this innovation center, so you can essentially explore this dynamic hub where a lot of emerging technologies, startup solutions, and cutting-edge prototypes are coming out. They have, of course, these amazing theaters where the sessions are going to be held. And, of course, one of my favorite parts is the networking and connection side. A lot of great innovators. It's sometimes just so energizing to go to these kind of events just to connect with others like you. So be sure to go there. Thousands of people go to this one. It's an amazing event. If you want to learn more and register, click the link in the show notes below, or you can go directly to their websites. Maybe you're driving right now. Go to meddevicessiliconvalley.com. That's meddevices plural. meddevicessiliconvalley.com. Get registered. November 19th to 20th, coming to you straight to the heart of Silicon Valley in the Santa Clara Convention Center. Now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. So as I said, there is a problem, which is to actually decode the brain. We need to decode it with a lot of resolution. So we need to understand exactly what is happening there with a lot of data points. On top of that, if we want to modulate it, so reading, it's about diagnosing, decoding, and then that decoding you can use to create communication, to create a speech. But then writing is how you create a therapeutic approach, right? A therapeutic approach meaning restoring function, restoring the cardinal symptoms of a disease, or stopping the symptoms of a disease. I'm speaking about Parkinson, epilepsy, stroke rehabilitation, in the future Alzheimer's, psych disorders, right? Real disease therapeutics. And to create that therapy, precision counts, right? In DBS, people have been trying to put these 8 contacts into the right side of the nuclei. And when you look at how many contacts of those you can put in the right side of the nucleus, because they are so big, at the end you put at maximum 1, right? And then you start stimulating and you create all this field of energy that eventually it can also create side effects. Now, if you can read at a super high resolution and you can write at a micrometric precision, you start getting a ton of control on that circuit. Because the other thing is that we've been tackling disease nuclei by nuclei, and the brain is about circuitry, and there are motor circuits and there are cognitive circuits, and also, if you are able to control from, also the neurons, the body of the neuron is deeper in the brain, and then the projections converge on the cortex. So if you are able to actually modulate all that in a very effective way, therefore the effectiveness that you get at the therapeutic side, the outcomes are greater. And if you are super precise, then the side effects are minimal, in the sense that you can increase the therapeutic effectiveness, reduce the side effects, but also even reduce drugs because you don't rely on them anymore. So with metals, you can reduce metals to micrometric size for reading, but not really for writing, because there are these Faraday reactions, and there are, over time, metals degrade because of the clashes between electrodes and, like all those Faraday reactions. But carbon is as you said, a non-metal and inert material that doesn't degrade over very long cycles of stimulation. So it's very stable both for reading at high resolution and writing at micrometric precision. And therefore, that's the beauty of it. I call it a platform material because you can use it in many different instances for many different indications, both in the central and the peripheral nervous system.
Fascinating. And something, I want to repeat back to you to make sure that I understand. The key feature here is that the fact that you guys are able to read and write. So the reading is essentially decoding, the writing is modulating, and we're able to do that. You just have a lot more leverage and ability to impact and influence the progression of Parkinson's. I would imagine that, like DBS has been a great breakthrough for Parkinson's, but something like this approach with graphene elevates it to a level that's needed. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah. So we call it BCI Therapeutics because we are bringing the world of cortical BCI with the world with micrometric DBS, let's say, right? So at the end, you have two interfaces that are taking control or recontrolling that circuit that in Parkinson will be the nigrous striatal circuit. So you have the cortical interface decoding the cortical fine dynamics. So hopefully in the future, we can even understand what would be the control target for a finger, right? And you can also cortically decode the intention of movement, the intention of a speech. So there is a factor of increasing the predictability of the brain, or at least remodulating the predictability of the brain that DBS cannot do. But if then you combine it in high resolution on the basal ganglia with that therapeutic micro stimulation, then you have that regain of that circuit in a way that it creates a much higher effectiveness because you have the precision, you have the connectivity and the coherence between the cortex, and therefore you can do what DBS can do in the sense that you can regain control or correct the cardinal symptoms of Parkinson's disease, but you can also do things that DBS cannot do, like controlling gait or improving a speech, or other things that we are investigating on the fine movement control.
I see. You mentioned, this category. It sounds like this is a new category, which is BCI Therapeutics. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that. And I guess from a marketing standpoint, when I think of new categories, if you look at just BCI versus BCI Therapeutics, like what's the main differentiator there?
For me, is that capacity of reading and writing in a therapeutic way along a circuit. So it's high density and high resolution bidirectional therapeutics control, right? So, and there's a paper, Aaron et al. 2024, where actually a dear friend of my, Tim Denison, also contributes, that looks at how these things are merging, how brain-computer interface and adaptive DBS, or at least some kind of control basal ganglia cortex, right, is actually coming together to actually address many, many different therapeutic areas on that circuit control mode.
Got it. And by the way, for the people who are listening or watching on Spotify and YouTube, by the way, I learned something interesting for Spotify. We have video on there. Apparently, in all of the Spotify podcasts worldwide, we're in the top 5% most viewed, which was kind of a shock to me because there's a lot of podcasts out there. So I want to thank my listeners for watching as well. But I want to bring up an image of your product. For those who are interested, go to Inbrain, INBRAIN dash neuroelectronics.com. You can see more there. But tell me a little bit more about what we're seeing here with the actual device. I have it here. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a small disc. This looks like smaller than a dime, and then a plate below. Tell us a little bit more about what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, this is just the intelligent neural controller. So this is a head-mounted neural controller, we call, that is the piece that is actually guiding the sensors. The graphene sensors are not here. They will connect cortically and subcortically to this piece. And all that will read and write real time in high resolution. I think the other component of this BCI Therapeutics, this is a closed loop. This is I think is factually the most advanced ML category that we have, because this is like having a mini neurologist in your brain that needs to diagnose but immediately react to what is happening there in a much more complex way that what Medtronic is now leading, right? Because we are talking about thousands of contacts. We are not talking about 8 or 16 contacts. So the low resolution part and the fact that metals can actually see clearly some determined biomarkers, but not the whole spectrum, is also important to determine what sophistication of closed loop products like this can drive in the future. But this
Got it.
is
And
the head-mounted piece.
I see. And then I'm guessing this is the part that goes more deeper. When you for the electrodes, they go uh, beneath the cortex, or they just lay on top of it. What you know?
Lay on top of the cortex, yes. There is a therapy site where you will see an animation on how the whole system works. You go into the therapy tab, but anyway, this
Oh
is
yeah,
the
let me go there. Here, let me go there right now.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, perfect. All right.
Yeah, there's where you have the system in action in a way that we are decoding these neural networks, and it's about restoring those symptoms, and it's a bit describing how high resolution can help with the graphene, and these are all the components.
hmm And let me read this out for those who are like maybe driving. So, first slide: graphene, the new frontier in BCI therapeutics, thinnest material known to man, yet 200 times stronger than steel, 10 times higher decoding accuracy and resolution than metals, micrometric precision modulation, and up to 1024 contacts. Tell us about the 1024 contacts. I read that somewhere else in one of your papers. Why is that important?
Yeah, I mean, we have the capacity to go up to 1024 contacts and maybe 5,000. I mean, there's always now a little bit of a race about who has more contacts. I don't think that's important. I think what is important is to adapt the resolution to the application. For some applications, you don't need that many contacts. It's just that we are fit to whatever number of contacts that will make sense within reason to do that, right? So this resolution cortical decoding in coherence and combination with the subcortical in a way that we can read and write real time, restoring the functions that have been lost for those patients. And this is the FDA breakthrough designation about.
I see. And something I noticed is that this looks like, for the most part, it could be because it's not subcortical, it's on the cortex, that this can be done. Essentially, this is a minimally invasive technique to essentially apply that. Is that correct? Because it looks like you have a pretty minimally invasive tool here to insert those electrodes. Was that correct?
Yeah. Right now, we are using the surgical workflows of deep brain stimulation just because it's very established, it's everywhere, it's fully reimbursed. So there's a whole base there of neurosurgeons that are super familiar to how this works. So we don't want to disrupt that too much in this stage, although we have a vision also for the surgical implantation of the future, and there's micro robots coming into the market. So we are definitely looking 360 and how this will be deployed. But right now, we didn't want to take more risk. We don't want to, make more changes within the market, and we are using those workflows.
Got it.
But also decreasing the invasiveness of the standard of care today, because today you have the neuromodulators on the chest and you have cables on the neck, and those cables on the neck have historically created a lot of issues when it's about neck movement and breakages here. So for me, that was a problem that we needed to solve as well. And then in this way, you can have surgery done in one stage. Right now, in many surgeries, you need 2 days. You put first the interfaces on the brain, and then the next day you put what is called in neuromodulation, the IPG. We wanted to get rid of that and put everything on the head.
Got it. Got it. And something, if you can, walk us through, like, after the implantation, what I see here on the slide said leveraging AI clinical co-pilots to enable meaningful care in more people. And we essentially have a actor, a patient, holding a smartphone up with an Inbrain a Neuroelectronics app that says freezing of gait detected, and then some options where you can enable normal walking, enable normal running, enable normal exercise. So if a patient with Parkinson's has your device, tell us a little bit more about this app and what's the purpose here? Like, what's the intervention?
Yeah. So right now, DBS around 60% of the effectiveness of DBS is around the cardinal symptoms like bradykinesia, dyskinesia, rigidity, tremor. But there are unsolved symptoms like gait. I mean, I know a very dear patient. So we have a patient board and we are building that more structurally. But one of the patients that co-develops and help us with the future of these therapies about, hey, I want to know when am I going to be so in perfect walking and activity, to take my 3 kids to an excursion, because actually his wife passed away and he's alone. So he's alone with 3 kids and with Parkinson's disease, and sometimes he cannot walk, right? So he wanted to know when he's going to be on off and how his walk could be normal, right? So he doesn't care about tremor. He doesn't care about many other things that today could be fixed. So we were thinking about how to help what DBS and the current standard of care cannot help. And I think Gait is a huge field, because 40 to 60% of people after DBS still have huge gait problems. Speech is the other one, right? So we see BCI players doing a speech decoding, but in Parkinson's disease, 90% of patients implanted with deep brain stimulation have dysarthria and speech problems. So we want to also contribute there. And there are many others that are non-motor symptoms where we think we could have a contribution, because we will have a much precise grip on those circuits that manage motor but also non-motor symptoms. So that's where we contribute big time to the effectiveness of the therapy today. And that's why we got reasonable proof of superiority versus the current standard of care through the FDA breakthrough for Parkinson.
The other thing was, we wanted to have you on the show last year, and you held off, and now I understand why, because you wanted to have a successful first in human. And so late last year, you guys essentially were you did the very first, the world's first human graphene-based BCI procedure. Tell us a little bit more about that milestone.
Yeah, I don't know if people know a little bit about the history of white graphene, but there was a Nobel Prize in 2010. And because of these dramatic capabilities of the material, actually the European Union put €1 billion in a consortia program to actually bring graphene in different dimensions, in photonics, in batteries. And there was this biomedical work package that my co-founders led on the biomedical applications and neural interfaces. So in Manchester, there's been a lot of enthusiasm about graphene as a material, but it never was applied in a biomedical application, let alone the brain. So for us, it was a huge milestone to work over the last 3 years on the de-risking, on the biocompatibility, on the stability, until the point that we could test it on a human being. And thank you for that beautiful human being that agreed to actually be the first patient there, because the objective is to keep proving that graphene is safe, but also that it is superior in performance to metals like platinum and iridium.
And I think, what's interesting is that, for me, I think you might be able to see, but on my bookshelf back here, I have all these books on AI, and of course, all of Ray Kurzweil's books about the singularity and everything. What's interesting is that, I think what makes this such a important milestone for science and medicine is that now we're in this space where, we have NVIDIA and all these different companies are producing a lot of new innovations in AI, and the compute that those things come with, our traditional metals just can't support. And so having something like graphene is probably going to be like, at least for me, I don't think, so Inbrain is going to be definitely the first. I don't think it's going to be the only one in the future. I think this is going to be the new standard in order to run these AI protocols on, because you can't run it on traditional metals. And even if you could, the wear and tear on them over time, is going to be an issue.
Yeah, that's why I was very excited about this, because there are so many dimensions where this makes a difference. So first of all, when it comes to metals and low resolution metals and technology like the one of the current tech giants like Medtronic, Abbott, Boston Scientific, every single contact needs to be put manually in place by people, right? So there's this Puerto Rican facility, for instance, for Medtronic, but I think for others, where people, and that's why in Switzerland, I told you that I live in Switzerland, we went to the watch industry to bring capable people that could put these super small sensors of platinum iridium in the right place on those interfaces today on the deep brain stimulation arrays. But that for scaling is not really that sustainable. Now, if you bring semiconductors where you can print circuitries, create any kind of shape or form for any other application, and then you put graphene on top, which increases the decoding ability and so on, you start talking about the future of, in this case, neurotech, but medtech in general. And then if you combine that with intelligent implants that are going to be living within you chronically, but retrieving and giving back information in a very intelligent way. I told you at the beginning that I didn't want to go to pharma because you take the pill, you don't know what's going on with that pill. Well, this is a completely the opposite. And that's why I saw an opportunity. This is going to be smart and it's going to help you and empower you to deal with your own disease. Back to this patient, Carlos, that I told you about, he's like, I go to the neurologist maybe once a quarter, maybe twice a year. The guy look at me, spend 15 minutes, fiddling with the programming that, by the way, today is also manual. And then I'm gone and my symptoms are back and I cannot reach him out, right? So he always says, I'm the best doctor. I know how to deal with this. Please empower me so I can help, because I know myself, I can help on that therapeutic approach. This is exactly what we want to do: automate, empower, and bring intelligence to our lives and our own disease. I as a patient, I want that.
Of course. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what I love about this is that, especially today, I think post-COVID, I feel like this trend was happening, but COVID really accelerated, which is people want to take more power back on their health. They, and I think, again, I love what you said is that the patient is the best doctor for themselves. That doesn't mean that you treat and diagnose yourself, but you know yourself better. And I think that having the ability to allow patients to do an intervention, right, and using technology for that is going to be so much better, because let's face it, you're not going to you can have all the specialists in the world. It's not going to be enough for patients, to get the care that they need on time. Because, like, imagine a patient, I mean, even if you're in a city, you're at home, like, what are you going to do? You're going to get in the car, you're going to go to the clinic, and it's just not going to work that way. So I love that you mentioned that.
Well, and we do it everywhere. IKEA empower us to build furniture. We build and we book our own trips. We basically, a lot of that service has been transferred to ourselves. Why not on our own health? We are capable, right? And more with the level of education and development that our societies have, we are going to be even more capable. And if you bring AI into the mix,
It's a no-brainer. Never
A hundred
better said.
percent. 100%. I think just even, I mean, we're in the very, very early days, but like just as an example, my son had um, essentially an ear infection, and being a parent, I used an LLM. I used Perplexity and ChatGPT to sort of provide like pictures of what I was seeing and his symptoms, and both of them pretty much diagnosed like it sounds like it's otitis media. Here's what the next things to do are. Of
Mhm.
course, we went to the urgent care clinic. We got the same thing, but if we didn't have access to an urgent care, right, we would have been out on our own. And I love that. I think with a lot of clinicians, there's this fear of like AI taking their job. But in fact, I think AI is going to empower them because it's going to allow for better patient care. And then physicians can actually focus on what's most important, which is the art of medicine, bedside manner, taking care of these patients and guiding them to better health versus leaving a patient on their own and they just get worse and debilitated. And by the time they make it to the clinician, the problem is much, much worse. And you have very poor quality of life.
Oh my God. That's why I went to diabetes and this amazing cloud care model where actually physicians are like a control tower, and they can see which patients are doing well, but also which patients need immediate attention, maybe now and not in 6 months when you have scheduled the follow-up visit. So I
Mhm.
think we are moving to a more personalized and precision neurological treatment, which I think is what we are having in all our environment. So why not in our health?
No, 100%. And Carlina, just as we kind of round out the interview, and again, thank you for taking time to come on the show as a founder. I know how busy you are. So to date, in terms of the funding, you guys have raised a little over 105 million. You raised a $50 million Series B. Congratulations. What's the
Thank you.
next year look like for you guys? Where are you guys in terms of your regulatory pathway and commercialization? BCI, of course, these kind of things take longer, but give us a little idea of where you are there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we need to complete this current clinical trial. I think this is a top priority in the sense that we have 8 to 10 patients scheduled. We have already 3 to 4. So there's been a lot of progress there. We need to complete that. But we are looking at setting up the next round of both preclinical and clinical studies and really driving these to the chronic first in human, both for central and peripheral control. I think the opportunity is so big that we wanted to go. I mean, we chose Parkinson because if you mix semiconductors, graphene, AI, and then you bring unknown indications, things stack in the risk side for investors in a way that you become hard to invest to. But if we prove that this is superior to what people know in a much more defining way, then the possibilities to go to many other indications are incredible. And this is what we are doing, right? We also have some proof of concepts on other areas that shows that platform potential that we have. So it's about executing and building the value that the society, the patients, and of course our shareholders need.
Fantastic. Last question for you for both the clinicians and investors who are watching. What are you attending any conferences this year, whether it's investor summits or clinical conferences, just in case anybody wants to meet with you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being so thoughtful about asking those things. So there's a couple of European events. Hello Tomorrow. It's also happening next week in Europe. We were selected actually as the Tech Tour 50. So we just had a very good event there, where there were the selection of these 50 companies that could have unicorn potential. From there was other conference coming up. So some of them are clinical. I mean, the Movement Disorder Society, the BCI Society, all those things are conference that we plan to attend. And then there are investors conference like LSI and MedTech Strategist in Dublin. Um, every founder knows that raising is a constant thing. And I want to be there when I need the money, but I also want to be there when I don't need the money. So we can have a much more human and mutual exchange on those events.
100%. I completely agree. Are you going to LSI Dana Point or Europe or both?
I was actually registered to go to Dana Point, but then I got an invitation for a very important European conference that I need to go to. So I won't be in Dana Point, but I hope to be either on the Singapore or on the European one.
Absolutely.
LSI
Yeah,
is one of the ones I don't miss.
Oh, I love LSI is one of my favorites. Actually, the Singapore one I'm very excited about. I still need to plan my travel for that.
Yeah.
Well, Carolina, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm very excited for you guys again, for the clinicians and investors and medtech professionals who want to learn more. Just go to their website, InBrain dash or hyphen neuroelectronics.com. Of course, give Carolina a follow on LinkedIn. Be sure to follow their company page. And as always, I'm your host, Omar Khateeb, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.